are so excited to be here in the AWS studio at Mobile World Congress. Whoop, whoop. And especially having a conversation with women in telco.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better than that. Can you just tell us who you are, what you do, and then, of course, from there, we go off script. So let's start, Geeta. Tell me who you are and what you do.
Hi, Shalini. I'm Geeta Chaudhary. I lead professional services for AWS in Asia Pacific and Japan, and also lead our global delivery centers. I've been in telecom most of my life. I've worked for companies like Ericsson, Nokia, where I've held positions in P&L.
Power woman in telco, and I bet it's changed quite a bit since you started. How many years have you been in telecom?
30 plus years now.
So you started with the big mobile phone.
Yes.
It's quite different.
When we never had the cell phones either.
Yeah, free phones. Yeah.
I love that.
Hi, I'm Danielle Rios-Royston. Everyone calls me DR, and I'm known as Telco DR. And I'm an agent of change in this industry. I'm probably the newest entrant of the panelists. I did not come to telco until 2017 when I was appointed CEO of a publicly traded company based in Canada. I'm a software girl. I have a computer science degree. So now I have a startup. I'm trying to really change the ecosystem of the software in this industry. It's still being run like we used to run software in the late 90s. And I'm bringing the public cloud, and it's one of the reasons why I hang out with the AWS guys all the time. And then now with generative AI, I think that's going to bring a lot more opportunity for innovation for the software that the telcos use. And so I'm got to be kind of vocal to drive change. And so people know me for constantly broadcasting my ideas, and I'm really excited to be here. So thanks.
I love that. We're going to come back to agent of change because I want to know why I'm a chief troublemaker, breaking all the rules. So I want to know why you're the agent of change.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, well, wonderful. I'm again, quite different background from my, the other two panelists. I work in Singtel. I run the Singapore business for consumer and SMEs. So I'm the CEO there, and I'm also the CEO of business development for Singtel. But I didn't spend my many years of career in Singtel, actually, or in telecom. So I'm actually relatively new to telecom as well. Yeah. So probably just a year before you.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2016. But before then, I have experience in different industries, including consulting, payments, and also banks.
Yeah, I love that. So you're in the business of telco.
I'm in the business of telco, yes.
Which is fantastic. Okay, so we touched upon AI and generative AI. Do you feel, that AI will take your jobs away?
I think generative AI is going to be transformative for all of our industries, but I don't think it's going to take jobs away. It's going to help, it's going to drive workforce transformation, because I think most companies are looking at a composite AI or a combination of human factors and Gen AI.
I love that. And in terms of when you were talking about being a change agent, how will you be using, or how do you think AI will be utilized in the field?
Yeah, I think it's going to be massive in all of our lives, not just work, but also just daily lives. And, just with any big shift in technology, you have to learn how to use it. You have to get ahead. You don't stop there. I think when Google came around, people were freaked out that libraries were not going to exist and things like that. And schools, just like with generative AI, banned Gen AI, they banned Google, but we've learned how to live with it and integrate it to our lives. There's still jobs. So it forces us to lift our capability, right? Learn how to work with it, become more productive. And so what was good enough in 2022, I think going forward, using generative AI will be more productive, and you just rise with it. So we just got to learn how to deal with it. It's here. It's not going away. So make yourself a better person with it. Yeah.
And getting into the field in 2017, is that what made you choose 2016? What made you choose this field?
It was a very unique opportunity. I was given the opportunity to run the telco in Hong Kong, which was also a listed company, SmarTone. So I thought that was just really unusual opportunity because I was in banking and payments until then. But I think the telco industry was looking for a new type of leadership to drive changes in the industry. And at the time, I think the company really felt that they need someone with a fresh pair of eyes, looking into telco and see what changes can be done. Yeah.
Right, so a new type of leadership. So let's go to a new type of leadership. Being a woman in the telco space. It's predominantly, it's male dominated. Do you feel that you bring, as a woman in telco, is that the new type of leadership? Do you feel that you bring a different energy, a different type of leadership in this space?
I think having women in telco, yes, we do bring different kind of leadership. I'd like to think that we are more collaborative as women leaders. I think we're more empathetic as women leaders as well. And I think just by having more women leaders in telco, I'm seeing that there are more women that are aspiring to be in telcos because they see a lot more women in the executive leadership positions. That also means that we have a huge responsibility because I think even though we've made progress, we are still very behind in terms of women in the tech sector. I mean, studies show that we're still at less than 30% women in the tech sector, and there's a huge leakage from classroom to boardroom. So as women, we need to bring that intervention so that we can continue to have a lot more women in the tech force.
So Geeta, where do you think that it needs to start, from the representation perspective to the education perspective to get more women into the telco fields?
Yeah, I think it needs to start right from school, right? When women start taking more STEM courses and are encouraged to do that. When you look at it, women are entering into colleges and doing computer science and engineering courses at a much higher rate. Almost 50% of the women in colleges, or more than 50% certain colleges, are women. The leakage starts after they join workforce, so that when they're in their mid to late 30s is when we see a lot more dropout happening. So I think the intervention needs to happen where we are continuing to encourage women in schools, but also as they enter workforce, we are creating an inclusive workforce for women so they are not dropping out. And this year's theme is inclusivity. It is inspiring inclusion for the International Women's Day. So I strongly feel that it needs to have intervention at all points. We hire more women, we empower more women, we develop more women, and as we increase the amount of women that are there in the leadership positions, I think we'll get a lot more lift in terms of women in these positions.
But I think we need to just add on to that, as mothers of girls, teaching our girls to think in a limitless way, right? Of we can do anything, any job that's out there. And so I think it starts from a very young age, teaching them that is possible. And I think I spent time in HR. I was head of compensation at a very large semiconductor company. And as the head of compensation, you see the people that come into the office, and it's the men asking for raises. The women don't ask, right? And so women are almost taught to ask for permission, and the men are taught to ask for forgiveness. So they're constantly pushing, they're asking for jobs they're not qualified for, they're asking for pay they don't deserve, and then the women, and I mean, I did this job for many years, not one woman came to my office asking ahead of time. They always waited patiently. And so I always tell women where they're like, I'm not getting paid what I deserve or whatever else. I'm like, the way you talk is with your feet. You leave. You go find another job. And that's actually the best way to get more money is to change jobs. You can get 20%, 30% bumps. And so you just leave. And they're like, what are we doing wrong? I'm like, you're completely underpaying me. And I'm not going to stand for it. And I think we don't talk with our feet.
But I also think it's not just about getting more women in tech or in STEM, but it's getting more women in the business of. Because the more that we have women in the business of technology, the more we'll also ensure that we don't have compensation as you need to ask. Yeah. And that's where the transparency will come in also. Like, why are we putting people in the position of having to ask for the promotion or having to ask for the raise? This should be, just equal pay for equal work.
But I think that's just like normal business.
True, that too.
Right.
But
I mean, an employer wants to spend as least as possible on their compensation. So they're not really excited to be passing out the bills and all that stuff. And so,
but we need to move to a compensation where this is the job. This is because we do know where the pay gap kicks in. It kicks in at maternity leave.
Yeah.
where women are taking it, men are not, because they know it shows a sign of weakness. And we also know it happens at the first promotion.
Yeah.
Where men ask for it and women don't.
And push and negotiate. Yeah.
Where we need to
and
think about that.
I think that all leads to women just feeling comfortable with being labeled pushy and bitchy. And right? I mean, and I think as women, I know I suffer from it personally, and I'm always like, why do I care what people think, right? Like, I need to push for what I need to go do. So I take total responsibility for my career. Like, I know what I want to go do, and I'm going to go after it. And I think it's not just enough that people are like creating more jobs and promoting people, but also we have to show our intention that we want the bigger job. It's two ways. It's not just the men creating spots for us, but us saying we really want that. And I mean, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm Hispanic, right? My whole entire family was like,
you get paid 53 cents on the dollar,
right? And I did not think I was going to be this like ambitious woman that was like going to be a CEO and certainly not of a publicly traded company. I kept finding myself like with these opportunities, with these open doors. And finally, when in my early 40s, I stopped saying no and I started saying yes. I started walking through the door and not being afraid about potentially failing or was I really ready.
Yeah, I mean, so what's your opinion on what advice you would give to women that want to come into the field? I mean, one of the things, I just read this amazing study that said, and this is unfortunate, but young women today are, mental health is at an all-time high in the negative way. And, so many women are not wanting, they don't have, and the number one thing that could help is mentorship. The number one is mentorship. And, we take that for granted, is how important our advice is. Give me advice for this next generation coming into the field. Best advice.
I think probably your study was also partly influenced by COVID, because I do see that a lot of younger workers, actually not just women, men as well, because during the COVID time, right, their whole university times were done online. And when they come into the workforce, that was an issue. Because, first of all, there was a long period where it was either hybrid or people mostly work from home. So they do find it quite hard to integrate. So, for example, our company really encourages everybody to come back as much as possible. And I do think that is actually much more healthy for the particularly younger folks. But in general, to your question, right, I fully agree with you. I think you have to be responsible for your own career. But there is a cultural bias, right? I think in more probably westernized society, being more upfront, build your own network, strive for what you want. I think that works a lot. I think in Asia, you still need to build your own network, whether it's mentorship and even better is sponsorship, right? Yeah. And you need to stack them, not just one or two people, but across different spectrums of your career and your personal life. But very importantly, right, one has to take risk. Right? And I fully agree. When you are not happy with the situation, you ask for the change, it didn't happen. At some point, you have to ask yourself, are you just accepting or you're going to make a change? Yeah. Right? If you can't make the change, then you just accept. Yeah. You have to accept and you don't complain. Yeah. Right? But if you feel like you don't want to take it, then get up and go. Right, I think that is very important.
Yeah, no, it totally happened. This exact situation happened to me. It was CEO of a publicly traded company. It started to go through a hostile takeover. There was a chance that the shareholders and everything would change. I knew I was underpaid, and I was like, all right, if there's going to be a new change in the management, review my compensation. And they're like, we'll review it when the fight's over and everything's settled. I'm like, if I were a guy, right, you would do it right now. And I'm like, and now I called my mom and I was like, I'm kind of left with no choice. I have to quit because just what you said, if I don't and I just wait and wait for it to be
something
over,
will happen.
I'm saying it's okay to treat me like this and I quit.
Yes.
Yeah. Geeta, best advice.
I was just going to add on to what Anna just said over here. I think while we should promote and push women to be more vocal about what they want, to be comfortable with the uncomfortable and raise their hand more than men do, I think we still need some structural programs to help women. I feel women are over-mentored and under-sponsored, and I feel having active sponsorship programs where we are lobbying for women to get better roles, better pay, and better positions are really important. And also, most importantly, we should enroll male allies. So we've done a lot of that, where a lot of men have raised their hand wanting to be a part of making sure that this gender parity or gender gap is reduced. So having the male allies work as sponsors for women can also really promote diversity and gender parity.
You know, I think language matters a lot. You know, one of the things, and we talk about intentional action. So I want to go to the last question to wrap on intentional action for change. They say, according to the World Economic Forum, it will take over 131 years to close the gender gap.
Yes. No.
131 years to close the gender gap. Where will you be?
Dead.
Not only will you be gone, but so will your children, and so will your grandchildren, and so will your great-grandchildren, which is absolutely ridiculous. So intentional actions for change. What will it take for us to close the gender gap, or bridge, let's use the word bridge, the gender gap? Solutions for change.
So as being a compensation person, one thing I've done in my company is everyone in the same role, men, female, young, old, India, the United States, that role is worth a certain dollar amount, and everyone at that role gets paid that amount. So we have a opposite, you know, we're totally remote, so you can live wherever you want. It depends on, you know, you need to be where our customers are and things like that, but you can go live in New Zealand, you can go live in Lebanon, you can live in the United States. And so everyone at that level, it's super transparent, gets paid that exact amount at all the levels. And we just have double, double, double. So 50, 100, 200, 400, 800, 16, 32. Transparent. Big, big. And again, I'm very comfortable with compensation. And so I'm not sitting there like, you deserve 5K more and you're a little bit, I'm not doing any of that stuff. I'm like, you want more pay? Apply to the higher job. I'm not going to do who's loud and who's pushy. Just apply to the higher role.
Oh, you're not pushy, you're assertive.
Or
and
whatever,
everyone
yeah.
wants that. And I think AI will help and go a long way to democratizing the pay system. Yeah.
I think as a woman leader in my company and also in the industry, I do feel I have important responsibility to help drive that, because I think a lot of the younger women, you know, new to the industry or new, you know, first job, second job, they will feel they have no voice, right? And we have to create a voice for them. They need to learn to speak up, but very importantly, right, those who have more voice or more presence, more networks, have to create opportunities for them. I think that is super important.
You know, I love that, because I think representation is not just about reflection. If you could see her, you could be her, but it's about using your representation with your power. If you have a seat at the table and you have power, you better use that power to create intentional action for change.
Absolutely.
I think focus and commitment and consistency. As Anna said, again, as a woman leader in telco and in tech, I think I want to institutionalize programs that have KPIs next to it. You get what you measure. So it's really important to set an intention and set a KPI and goal, which is structured with these programs to be able to move this and accelerate this faster. Otherwise, it's like 100 years or 131 years now. So you get what you measure, and I think you should have a very focused commitment and make an intentional effort.
I love that. Measure what you treasure, which I think is really incredibly important. I think the other thing, and I just want to say this, one of the things that we are doing with language is not necessarily calling it male allies, we're calling it leadership allies. I don't care if you're a man or a woman,
Correct.
if you are in a position of leadership, use that and pull everyone up. And I think it's important, and even with training, I started thinking about this recently, why are women getting just the training? All managers need to be trained to make sure we're all conscious. Because if we're just training the women, that's why they have the imposter syndrome. Because it's like, why are the women just getting the training? The men are then saying, I don't need training. You need the training. I don't need it. I'm the macho. And, you know, they take the power then, right? And so we're starting to use new language for everything. And I think that goes a long way. But you know what goes the longest way? You incredible leaders. You are leaders for change. You are using your intentional action. So thank you very much for this incredible conversation.
Yeah, it was great.
And for using your power to create the change.
Yes.
And
awesome.
thank you. You asked for this conversation.
Very cool.
Let's go.
I mean, yeah.